Melanie, for reminding me about that. I trust everybody on this call and watching this YouTube video. How about now? Is that coming through?
Yeah, we're seeing you
Okay,
now. Yep.
cool. All right. This was December, and so when we publish this out as a PDF, you will be able to click on these links and read more about them. But most link off to like the Power BI blog, where they always do a nice write-up with screenshots. And in the blog posts every month that Power BI puts out, they also do a YouTube video. So if you'd rather kind of see them talk through it, you can also jump into that YouTube video. All right, thank you, Jeremy. I really appreciate chiming in to let me know. Here's January. So one thing for people who have very big data sets, I don't know if anyone on the call is in that situation, but they have a feature in preview. I'm sure it's premium as well, where you can scale out data sets. So that may be something you want to check out. They also, this is kind of encouraging. They continue to try to improve the experience if you're using Excel to talk to Power BI data sets out in the service. So that's nice to hear. Things like they're allowing you to pull out more rows more quickly, and also kind of like maintain your matrix formatting as you export that out to Excel, or even I, I need to read a little further to understand. They were using the word export, but then it also appeared very much that it was a connected workbook. So yeah, they're exporting the data, but it's also like staying connected live to the Power BI service. So some encouraging things going on that front. If you are trying to get some users who are very used to the the pivot table features, and they want to live in Excel, this can be a good way to kind of bridge the gap sometimes. So yeah, use our Power BI data sets, and you can use your favorite client tool of Excel where you need to. Um, they're always doing some updates to data marts, which is one of those features that's still in preview for premium customers, but we talked about it a little bit in December. It's kind of like deploy your own database to take citizen ETL to the next level. And January is also always their month to do the on-premise product update for report server. So I'm gonna kind of skim over this one in February, and if there are any other features or things that people want to know specifically more about, we can definitely dive into those for a second. But in February, I saw a lot of talk about themes. They're making them accessible. They're making them easier to use. I guess I haven't used them extensively, probably as much as I should, but something about being able to replace your base theme. So a lot of themes updates. Um, yeah, and then conditional formatting based on text fields. That is exciting. No longer do you have to create a measure just simply to get conditional formatting done. You can actually make it like rules. If it says this, then make it yellow. If it says that, then make it green. So that's exciting. You'd probably one of those features that you like that wasn't in there already. So um, it wasn't. You had to do it numerically, but this is now there. Um, and then for sure, I want to mention, and then I want to stop so I leave plenty of time for questions and for Jeremy is that in March, I do think there's several things we've kind of heard are coming, announcements that'll be made. There's a Power BI Summit that's a virtual conference. And this is also just typically a month where Microsoft will put together they call them release waves announcements, but we've definitely heard rumblings and some previews about there's going to be better operations, better monitoring, better like usage analytics built into Power BI, and maybe even better source control. There's definitely some interesting um, announcements probably coming around that. So I would expect at our next meeting or two, we'll have, even though we'll be meeting monthly, that we'll have a lot to talk about. Any of those features that people want to ask about or talk about, or other features that we didn't mention here? All right, that's great. Well, for our next meetings, one thing, Jeremy and Taguma and I, your user group leaders, got together in January and set out the schedule for the year. So I do plan on putting that out as a kind of a tentative schedule if we look out past May. But these are our next 3 meetings, and we'll start being able to get them published a little earlier. We didn't get February in place until about a week before, but we should start planning these things out, and we're planning to do our next one March 23rd in Stillwater, Oklahoma. So if you can, there will be online options, but for those in-person meetings, you always get the most out of it. If you come in person, you actually meet people, you can talk to folks, and not all the content, especially the discussion, happens online. So we'd love to have you in person there. And yeah, then we'll do on April 20th online. And I've got a speaker I should have put here. His name is Gregor Bruner. He'll be joining us to talk about a new a product I think that he has. It's called Measure Killer. I think it's a free product, kind of an open source sort of thing. So that sounds interesting. And we'll plan another one May 18th online. All right. Anything else before we turn it over to Jeremy? Okay, great. Thanks. Well, Jeremy, please feel free to take it away if you want to take over the sharing and all that.
All right, good deal. So I am sure that in the last few months, all of you have heard about ChatGPT, this AI chatbot that um, has kind of come out and started making waves. And I was curious about how we might be able to leverage ChatGPT within Power BI. So I just kind of started looking at a couple of things that we might be able to do. And so let's just go ahead and dive in. I will give a quick intro, which is going to be what is ChatGPT, what is OpenAI. Then we'll kind of talk about how to access some of those services, and then look at use cases and best practices, recommendations, that kind of thing. And what I'm really excited to do is just get in and show you some of the really powerful things that you can do in ChatGPT to augment your understanding and knowledge about Power BI and in coming up with solutions. So just as a quick aside, the way that I have started thinking about ChatGPT in my own mind after having used it for a few weeks now is that it's just like a better Google search engine. And I have really been enjoying using it. But let's jump in and talk really quickly about OpenAI. So OpenAI is the privately held company that developed the Chat GPT service. And so they call it a service because you can actually access it as a RESTful API endpoint. I don't know how many of you are familiar with REST APIs. Basically, uh, I know that everybody will be familiar with plugging a URL into a browser and getting a web page back. With REST services, you can program your API to say, okay, I'm going to plug in not necessarily a browser, but maybe in some code, I'm going to plug in a URL, and rather than get a web page back, I'm going to get some data set back. Okay, so um, OpenAI has several different services. The major ones that they do are natural language processing, NLP, computer vision, and reinforcement learning, which I'm not even really 100% sure what reinforcement learning is. Maybe some kind of neural net, or maybe the reinforcement learning is what they are referencing when they talk about ChatGPT. But the really cool thing is that you can access this service for free. It's open source. And what I was going to try to do, I wasn't actually able, and I was telling Brent earlier in our meeting here, I wasn't actually able to do this because it ended up being a little bit more involved than I thought, but I was going to create a custom connector for Power BI that would allow you to access the Chat GPT service directly within Power BI. So I did some work on that. I didn't get all the way there. I'm not going to be surprised at all when someone else comes out with that custom connector. I assume that it will happen before the end of the year, to be honest with you. But, and maybe it'll be me who comes out with it. I don't know if I decide to spend some more time on it. So not being able to do exactly what I wanted, I said, we'll still have some really cool things to show you about how you can use ChatGPT in Power BI, or, to help you come up with solutions to issues that you're facing in Power BI. So how do you access the service? Well, the first thing you have to do is create an account, free to create an account. If you want to access the services through their API, just like when we plug in a URL into a web page, sometimes we have to sign into that website. Well, a REST APIs will often require you to authenticate as well. So that's where you get into generating your API key. And then I kind of mentioned creating this custom connector with the Power Query SDK, Power BI. That's going to be some more coding type stuff. Oh, and I will mention that the entire layout for the presentation that I'm giving you now and the majority of the content was generated by ChatGPT. So just as a tip of the hat, another tip of the hat to this AI software. I mean, just about all of the content that you're seeing here was generated by that service. Pretty cool. And we'll kind of talk about what it looks like to create an account so that you can start doing your own stuff in there. So we talked about some possible use cases, I think, in terms of creating your custom connector, but what can you actually do with it? Well, one thing that you could do is sentiment analysis. So the language models that they have could be used to analyze sentiment in customer feedback. If you have those types of forms that customers give you, it could certainly be used to analyze sentiment with, a Twitter feed, or maybe within looking at connecting to Exchange, your Exchange server, and doing sentiment analysis on all of the emails that you have flying back and forth in your company. You can use so we could do text summarization. So if you're a company that has long blocks of text, this gives the example of news articles or research papers, possibly even customer support emails, contracts, anything where you have a large amount of text. The language models could be used within Power BI to visualize summaries of those texts so that you can get a quick overview of the most important information without having to dive into all of the details. And then a third use case would be anomaly detection. So there are machine learning models available through OpenAI services that can be used to detect anomalies in time series data. So that could be anything from server traffic, server performance metrics, to website traffic, sales data. And so connecting to the service within Power BI and then connecting your data set to that service would allow you to build some visualizations that would help you understand where you might be seeing anomalous events in your data. So just a couple of use cases. I did do a couple of things here, and this is just a presentation, but we're going to do some real-time querying of ChatGPT. But here's the prompt that I gave it. I said, write me a DAX formula that allows me to create a table with the fiscal year ending in September. And it just went ahead and spit that DAX out. So I could copy that code, slap it right into Power BI, and I would have my date table with the fiscal year end month where I wanted it. Pretty sweet. And it doesn't just give you, as you can see here, the DAX code. It will go on and explain what certain variables or functions are doing within that code, which is just incredible. Here's another example. I said, write M code that will allow me to connect to the OpenAI services. So this is, you might find this comical. I know I call myself a cowboy coder. Like I kind of know how to throw a lasso around some code and put it together to make something work. I'm not like a classically trained programmer. Everything that I know in technology, I've learned myself online. Um, so like I had a business degree, so zero like educational classical educational training in programming, right? And so what I was going to end up doing was with ChatGPT, say, help me understand how I can build this custom connector to connect to your services. And it gave me some very good code. I, as I said, it ended up being a little more involved than I expected, but you can see right here, it went ahead and generated some M code and did the same thing. It explained what some of those variables mean, how they're supposed to be used, as well as how some of these functions like JSON.document or web contents are being used and what they mean. So those are just a couple of use cases. Let's look at some best practices and recommendations. Again, all of the content generated by ChatGPT. So I said, ChatGPT, what are some best practices and recommendations that you have? Or what are the top three? Um, the first one that it gave us was to ensure that you secure the API key that you generate to connect to its services. So if you're going to use that REST API, again, just like with regular URLs that you plug into a browser, a lot of times you'll have to authenticate. What this is just saying is whenever you, and what you use to authenticate with the OpenAI service is this token, this API token or key, what it's calling a key. So it's just telling you keep your API key secure. Okay, yeah, that makes sense. Choose the right service for your data, right? So we looked at a few of the major different services that they offer, the natural language processing, um, the, what was it? Computer vision and reinforcement learning. So you have to have at least some familiarity with the service that you're wanting to use so that you ensure that you're um, choosing the right one for your particular use case. And then number three was use the appropriate visualizations for your OpenAI powered insights. So that's just a good best practice and recommendation for any data that you're working with, whether it's you know data generated from ChatGPT or just data that's coming out of your Excel spreadsheet that's shared with everybody in your department. Um, there are certain visualizations that are going to be a lot more effective than others. So not bad best practices and recommendations there. And I did not update my summary, so you can see I don't have that. But let's just dive in and look at some actual queries that we can issue to ChatGPT. So here we go. Um, I told you that I would show you how to create your account. So I just went to Bing, and I'll preface this really quick with saying Microsoft has made a huge investment in OpenAI. They are currently in a public preview of Bing that includes the OpenAI chat GPT service integrated into the browser. You may have seen a couple of articles about that, how, the I think if you look, if you can even see it here. Like if we click on chat, it'll tell me, oh, you have to actually be in, um, you have to have access to the new Bing or join the wait list, right? So if you wanted to get onto the public preview, you may not end up having to, before the year is over, I doubt that you will have to have a OpenAI account. You'll probably be able to do what I'm showing you directly within Bing by using this chat function. But if you wanted to not wait and go ahead and get into it now, just get into Bing or Google and look for ChatGPT. You'll see the OpenAI URL. And so when I click on this, it is going to show you this page. And then all you would have to do is click on try ChatGPT, and it is going to take you to a place where you can create your account. And once you have your account created, I can't see the top of this because once you get your account and you get signed in, this is exactly what it's going to look like. So we're ready to start talking to our AI chatbot. And one of the things that I did to just test, how good is this thing? I went over to the community forum and I logged in and literally took questions that were on the Power BI community and copy and pasted them into ChatGPT, took that answer that it gave me and pasted it back. And you can see, I think I did that for 4 different questions. And on at least 2 of them, they said, yep, that solved my problem, which is pretty incredible. I mean, let's just look at this one really quick. So, and I didn't even read any of this at all. Well, there's my answer. I didn't read any of this person's what they're asking. Um, they said they put this out here. I copy and pasted it. ChatGPT said to to add the quotation marks. Here's some M code that you can use to do it. And I made sure and credit ChatGPT. I said I did not. I tried to make sure that I gave credit where credit's due. I did not actually answer this myself. I just went and plugged it into the URL. So in any case, that is pretty nifty. And I can demonstrate how I did that really quickly if we would like to see that. Let's see. Community forums. And let's just go to can we get a shout out? Which category do we want to look at? Desktop or report server, Power Query? Anybody have any recommendations or something that you want to see? You can put it in the chat or you can tell me. Do we have anything in the chat? Let me look. No, that's okay. We'll just go to desktop. Let's just go to desktop and see what we got. And I like to choose the questions that don't have an answer yet. So let's just say filter function in connection with parameters. Sure. This was asked 5 minutes ago. So I don't know what this person is asking or what they have going on here, but I am just going to plug it into ChatGPT and see what it spits out. Oh, and did he put in his DAX expression? Oh, he did. So we'll do something here and plug in the, so it gave us an answer even without seeing the DAX. But let's just say, let's take this over here. And
So while he's typing that in, I'm kind of looking at it myself to see if I can figure out what his problem is. Oh, it is interesting
and
how ChatGPT kind of, used that same kind of convention of like, okay, you have to paste your DAX if you want us to help you, kind of, if you're going to ask for help. So it's interesting how they did that.
so there you go. I mean, with two queries, we've got, and I could have done it in one if we had just had the ability to paste that image in there. But I don't know if this is actually going to solve his problem. But I think that it might help him think about maybe some things that he hasn't thought of yet. So I'm just going to go ahead and paste this in and say, here you go, guy. Maybe this will help you think about something that you haven't already thought of. Does anybody have a question here that they would like to see if we can solve?
Well, while people are thinking of those questions, one thing that kind of surprises me, and maybe it shouldn't, but that your DAX can change so much based on the data model and the relationships. Um, Now, of course, we usually, as people, we interpret those things visually by looking at the tables and the relationships between them. But I'm sure that a model can be trained more and more to like either look at the image and understand the same thing that people do about the
Hmm.
relationships and then customize the DAX. So that's just kind of a interesting, just there's something that makes DAX a bit different from other languages where it's not as generic and reusable because it tends to be customized for the data model.
Right.
But I don't see that that's an insurmountable
Well,
obstacle.
and the neat thing about this is that you can ask questions for literally any area of Power BI. So, that was a desktop question. What if we had a report server question? I mean, we could come in and say, what do we got here? How can I automate a process to get data? Here we go. To get data from a folder. And I'm not sure why this is in report server, but we'll say that specifically. So, here we go. And I will say ChatGPT is not perfect. A lot of times I have to tell it, well, I am actually on a specific version of this software. So that may be the case for this report server. Maybe we need to look at um, a specific version. But here is the axiom that I find to be true. We ask a better question and you get a better answer. And so that's certainly true of the um, prompts that you issue to ChatGPT. If you ask a pretty generic question, it's going to give you a pretty generic answer. If you ask a very specific question, it will come out with a pretty specific answer for you. And it looked like we got a query in the chat. So I'm just going to answer this person's question really quick, and then we will go look at what we got in the chat there. And again, just going to copy and paste and let this person know. This was on me. Okay, let's see. What kind of question did we get in our chat? Was that in here? What am I missing? Why can't I see the chat here?
Well, yeah.
I'm not sure.
I'll tell you there, Jeremy. And it was something that I kind of put in there, but like, should I use should I use Power BI workspaces or apps to share my Power BI report? Kind of a should question. I would say that I'm thinking about like if this is if this is useful, then like the community forum or any forum could just use the Open API to take any question and generate a response right away. Um, and I see what you mean as like it could be helpful as a first step of like, let's it might ask you some questions like, have you thought about all these things? And if so, help you ask a better question, right?
Mhm.
If you have already thought about them, or maybe if you haven't, or if it's unclear from the way you're asking the question, that might kind of be a good instant feedback of like, okay, obviously I'm asking the wrong question here because
Yeah,
it might help you ask a better one.
absolutely. And I think that that is kind of the true power in what ChatGPT represents. It's saying, I'm stuck in this spot. I'm going to go ask a question to the AI, and it's going to maybe help me think of something that I haven't already thought of, or maybe it'll just give me the answer that I'm looking for. Either way, I'm getting further down the road than I was. And getting there probably many times much faster than I would have if I went and posted something out in the community or something like that.
Yeah.
Eh,
Well, let me
Um,
like if we look at the answer to this one, it's interesting though because I guess when I asked that question, I meant Power BI apps. But I see in the last in bullet number 5 that it's it seems to be indicating that it's talking about embedding it in a web app, like a custom web app. And And so it tells me that kind of it states it. That's something I've heard other people mention. Like it states things very matter of factly. Like it doesn't tend to qualify. Well, I think, or in my opinion, I that. And so if I was totally uninformed, I might just take that as truth and say, oh well, I have to
Right.
do Power BI Premium to do a Power BI app, because that's what I meant when I asked the question, which is not true at all. Like you can use apps in Pro for sure. So kind of interesting to yeah, interesting to think about that a little bit. Like you still kind of have to know. I don't know. You always have to take it with a grain of salt, right?
You do. Yeah, absolutely. As I said, it is certainly far from perfect. But I think that in terms of being able to augment our knowledge and understanding of Power BI, and really, I mean, we're talking Power BI specifically here because we're a Power BI user group, but you could literally use this for anything that you're working on, right? Um, and one of the things that I love about this is that we can go back and talk in natural language. And I told it on point five. I'm not talking about an app. I'm talking about a Power BI app. And so it'll like it goes back in your conversation and we'll look at it and say, oh, okay, well, here's something to consider for Power BI apps, right? Interesting stuff. Does anybody have any questions or anything that they would like to see if we can answer while we're in the session here? Because I don't really have a whole lot else for us to do other than, I guess a quick summary where, you know, I guess to summarize, ChatGPT is a service available from OpenAI, privately held company. Microsoft has made huge investments in OpenAI. You will very likely be able to access the very same type of functionality that you're seeing on this browser window here within Bing. I would guess probably before the end of the year. I don't have anything specifically telling me that, aside from the fact that we're in public preview for that right now. And then lastly, you can literally issue queries to ChatGPT about anything that you have going on in Power BI, including generating DAX code, M code, helping you maybe fix issues with your model. That was, I think, one of the questions that I answered earlier in the week to test it out and see how good is this chatbot. Somebody had at the uh, desktop was throwing an error about their model, and it was able to determine that from the error text. So just really, really powerful tool. And I hope that you all are as excited about this as I am because I'm super excited about it. So with that summary, anything that anybody in the user group would like to try and give this a spin here? Or I mean, any other questions that you have based on the presentation? Well, then, okay. I guess we will wrap it up a little bit early. Brent, did you have anything else?
No, except we will be looking. Just look for a little information about our March meeting and coming up soon, and we will get this video and the slides posted up on our user group site. Yeah, and thank you, Jeremy, very much.
Yep, absolutely. Happy to do it.
I'm actually signing up right now. It's cool. It's interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting to see it in action because I've heard a lot about it, but I hadn't actually seen it much. So
Yep. I mean, hearing about it and experiencing it, vastly different things. I know that there are a lot of concerns about, AI and the robots taking everything over. I I don't know. I don't necessarily share those concerns. Yeah, I'm excited by it. I think that these types of models, the way that they work and the math behind them, they're really just a reflection of the data that you feed into them. Now, ChatGPT has been trained on, I don't, my understanding is all of the data on the internet. So there's probably some pretty bad stuff out there. We might want to, think about filtering some of the data that it gets fed to train it. But in general, I think that the future of, augmenting our own knowledge and understanding with this type of software is just, I mean, the potential is huge, and really exciting to me. So I guess with that, we will wrap it up. You all don't hesitate to reach out if you have questions or you want to, just chat about this further. I'm happy to do that. And I think that all of our contact info is available on that community site. And thank you all for coming.
All right. Have a good one, everybody. Thanks.
Thank you, Brent and Jeremy.
Yeah.
Thanks,
Thank you.
everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.